Wondering how ETFs can fit into your portfolio? Join us for our Spring into ETF Investing event, premiering May 24th and 31st. Check out these two exciting two-part events, which we curated specifically for you, the DIY investor. Our special guest speakers and insightful industry experts will provide you with the information and education you need to confidently manage your own portfolios. You won't want to miss these specials.
Hey everybody, it's Larry Berman here. All I can say this week is, give me an A, give me an I. It certainly was the culmination of earnings week with retail stocks and Nvidia really pushing the market to a very, very interesting pattern this week. So let's have a look at a couple of things because, you know, if we were to remove AI from the equation, you know, which we can't, of course, you know, what might that look like? Anyways, let's take a dive into the chart room and see what we learned this week. We were looking at a industry report that came out of FactSet this week, summarizing the use of the word or phrase AI or artificial intelligence in this quarter's earnings conference calls. They've been monitoring this really since ChatGPT, but I guess they went back in history and backfilled for a number of years. You know, a decade ago, nobody talked about it at all. Kind of ramped up in the 17, 18, 19 timeframe. Kind of flatlined through COVID and the recovery, and then really, you know, fourth quarter of 22, Microsoft invest in ChatGPT, and all of a sudden everybody's talking about it. This quarter, 199 companies mentioned artificial intelligence in their earnings call. By sector, obviously technology names, you know, the most, but really, as you can see, impacts every sector. You know, I got to wonder in the materials sector with a mining company of sorts, what they're talking about use of artificial intelligence to make their process more productive, perhaps. So, you know, I would say here, utilities, yeah, maybe, but in many sectors, real estate, come on, give me a break. But certainly for productivity enhancing, you know, it makes a lot of sense. Obviously, technology makes the most, but you can see it's everywhere. And so when does this end? And the answer is probably not anytime soon. So on a percentage basis, over 90% of tech companies mention artificial intelligence, you know, in their conference calls. When we look at it on a company by company basis, Meta, Nvidia, Microsoft, and you can see the list there of the top names. So obviously it's pretty important. It's highly concentrated in certain sectors, obviously more than others. So, you know, let's look into the chart room and see what all that meant for the markets in the last couple of weeks. Okay, so here's our poster child for AI, Nvidia reporting this week. Again, blowout numbers, stock split 10-for-1. I laugh when I hear people say stock split's good for the stock. It matters absolutely zero. It doesn't add any value whatsoever. So because it's a lower amount, the thought is more people can invest in it. Okay, fine. But at the margin, that amount of new buying is equivalent to a rounding error of an institution adding or subtracting, from its holdings. So, I dismiss that, yet people kind of speculate around it. There was a paper put out, can't remember who put it out, following earnings, looking at some of the ETF rebalancings that are likely to happen, XLK being one of them, and the relationship and size of Nvidia relative to Apple within that ETF and what it might mean when that gets rebalanced. And so there's an expectation perhaps of some front running of that, kind of like when a stock is going to come into an index, guys buy it up knowing there's going to be a natural buyer to take them out when the index, when it gets actually put in the index. So that's not really the case here, but in a reweighting or rebalancing of an index, that if that stock is going to be a much higher component and others be sold, that's when it does really, matter. So there's a good chance between now and the end of the quarter, Nvidia is just going to have this bid to it, I think. And that obviously keeps tech and the market overall fairly firm, unless we start to see the rotation. On Friday, we didn't see any rotation. Apple was up. Apple's supposed to be one of the big names that would be sold. Microsoft, the other big name in XLK, is a name that would be sold in favor of more share buying of Nvidia. So want to start to see that play out first, but on Friday, it was kind of everything was up there and the market closed pretty much with a strong bid, although a little bit off the highs of the day. When we look at the weekly, the reversal on Thursday following Nvidia's earnings Wednesday night was, this bar here. And it was almost exclusively linked to the stronger ISM numbers, and which pushed interest rates up, which almost has nothing to do with anything tech, but caused a lot of just flow. And when we see these big outside reversal bars, they matter a lot. And you can generally see through history when we see them that it probably means, at least for a little while, sideways to down consolidation. So I would expect that unless we take out the high from Thursday of this week in subsequent weeks, and until we do that, the markets are probably in a consolidation mode. Again, does that mean they're going to go down? Does that mean they're going to collapse? No, absolutely not. That AI theme is probably not going away anytime soon. So drilling further down from, what's happening in technology, the cues, let's look at artificial intelligence specifically. So this is an ETF we highlighted on the channel months and months ago, probably years ago at this point, AIQ. And it's a basket of companies that, as we just went through reporting, probably very heavily commented on how AI is playing a role in what they do. So this ETF, all eyes on here, because we did not see that. Now, obviously, Nvidia, you would think is a huge part of this, is actually not. So this ETF is more of an equal weighted approach to the sector. Right now, Nvidia is under 5% of this index, unlike an XLK, where Apple and Microsoft are like north of 20%, and Nvidia's, 4 or 5% of that ETF. So that was the rebalancing thing I was talking about. So, are we going to see a reversal here? We kind of saw one a few weeks ago. Are we going to see one now? TBD is the answer. We talked a few months ago about coming up towards the highs from 2021. It looked like a couple of weeks ago we made a new high and it failed back into the range, and now we're challenging that new high again. Tops are tough. tops roll, distribution, months and months and months, and sometimes more than that, quarters before it ultimately, the supply outweighs the demand. So when is that going to happen? Listening to some of the analysts and some of the portfolio managers talk about AI in their earnings report, Nvidia in their earnings report, there's still a lot of room. They can't meet demand fast enough for their chips. So anyways, all eyes and ears here, because when you look under the hood, again, the market overall is not robust here. Earnings, very, very concentrated, very good, but very, very concentrated. If you're a growth company, earnings were good. If you were a value company, earnings sequentially were down, right? So, this is not a rising tide lifts all boats rally. It has legs to it, more than likely. The Fed tried to push back in their meeting minutes this week in terms of saying several of the members are open to raising rates if needed. That was a little bit behind some of the risk reversal we saw this week. But ultimately, I can't imagine the Fed's going to raise rates. So I think the next move is a cut. Right now, the first full cut is December. It got into September. A couple of the data points push it back. So that's going to keep ping-ponging here. As we get into the next FOMC, again, there's no move coming anytime soon. Waller this week said, we need to see several is 3, 4, 5 kind of data points of jobs, of inflation, for them to be convinced that inflation is going to come back down to their target. So higher for longer still, but AI right now, in the scale of markets, AI is weighing down, meaning lifting the markets more than the cost of capital, and higher for longer is kind of hurting. Anyways, that's kind of my eye on the market this week. If you're American, celebrate the long weekend. Happy Memorial Day. Start of the summer, you're going to see me wearing my whites starting this weekend. I find that funny. I wear white all year round, but you will see me more and more on the golf course. If you see a lot of red on my face, I'm not using enough sunscreen. Anyways, have a great weekend, everybody. See ya on Monday on BNN.